you're enjoying Glasgow Business Stories, then why not subscribe to the channel? There's new videos dropping every fortnight with great business stories from great business owners, so we don't want you to miss out.
Michael, great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Could you give us a little snapshot as to who you are and what your business is, please?
I'm Michael Bergson. I've been working in the hospitality industry for about 30 years, over 30 years. And I now have a chain of bars and restaurants, 5 places called Bucks Bar. We've got 3 in Glasgow, 2 in Edinburgh. That's a fried chicken and rock and roll kind of concept. And we've got another place called Thundercat, and we're about to open another one called Thunderdog. So they're all, fast, energetic, casual, quite loud music, good atmosphere, vibrant kind of places. Good fun kind of places.
And what led you to this point? Give us a bit of background. Go back as far as you want to.
The common thread is, you start working in pubs. Mm-hmm. You've got to get a job working behind a bar or in a kitchen. And after that, you kind of work your way up. So, you become pub charge hand. Yep. So that was me at my dad's local pub. And then I started working for a restaurant group called DiMaggio's.
Okay, yeah.
Very well-known restaurant group. They've got places like Cafe Andalus and things like that as well in Edinburgh. And worked my way up in management with them, and then decided to go and work for another couple of companies. And basically, long story short, started getting a reputation for running the kind of hybrid venues that were big in the 2000s, which were big bar, restaurant, and nightclub type operations. And that's what I ended up. I found my niche doing that. Okay. So you can imagine a huge big building. It's got a bunch of bars. It's got a nightclub. It's got a big restaurant. Yeah. That kind of thing. Functions and events and all that stuff. Even weddings we would do. You know. So that was what I did. And then I set off and do my own thing in 2008. That was my first place that I opened.
And what was the catalyst? Was running your own place always something that you wanted to do, or was it you just thought you'd hit the ceiling within the management structure?
Well, no, I'd it's quite a useful story. We were talking about it earlier. Do you fit into a big corporate structure? Yeah. And actually, the one company I'd started working for was an English-based company, and it had this big venue called Tiger. Yep. Yeah. Which you're too young to know what the Tiger is. You two know you. Show your age. But that was the place to be in Glasgow for a while. And it was run by a brilliant company, really good culture. The company owned about 30 units. And I thought, this is great. I always really liked my bosses. I thought, this is for me, being a director and working my way up and getting share issues. I really wanted to be part of that company. But then there's a buyout and a bigger company takes them over. And they were just horrible. Yeah. And actually, the story I always tell is the one where my bosses at the time, who I really liked, came into the room one day and said, "Don't worry about this buyout. This is a wonderful company. Everything's going to be fine." And the 2 guys that held that meeting with all the managers of the units got sacked a week later. Because they were surplus to requirement, because this bigger company wanted its own people in. Yeah. I didn't like the other people they brought in, didn't like the way they worked. And I really became quite disillusioned, Yeah. And that was it. I decided at that point, I've got to do my own thing. The only way I'm going to create a culture that I like is by doing it myself.
So that kind of master of your own domain. Do you think if that buyout hadn't happened, you'd have...
I honestly think, it could have. Yeah, I think you can. Some people are lucky enough to stay in a company all their life and be happy in their work. Yeah. And to work their way up and to just think, this is enough for me. That's a great position to be in. But in something as stressful as a restaurant and bar and hospitality game, when you really think that you've got to go over and above to make a difference. Yeah. And you're doing all that and you don't feel it's getting appreciated and people are getting treated as numbers and you're seeing how hard the staff are working, and it just didn't sit well with me.
And what age were you at this point then?
I was actually, that was 2008. So I was just early 30s. I was in my 30s, but 33, 34. Yeah.
And were you worried? Did it feel risky or did it feel right?
It was really, really risky. I'd actually, to be honest, I've jumped forward a wee bit because I was about to leave the company, but I got offered another job from an entrepreneur, a guy called James Mortimer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I actually did like working for him.
Yeah.
But I'd already set out in my mind that I was going to do my own thing. But he said, look, I'm opening this thing in Royal Exchange Square. It's going to be, it was a venue called One Up, which was a bar, a members club and a grill room above it called 29. There was a nightclub called Carbon. And he said, look, I'm looking for someone to come and work for me, working across these venues, but mainly the One Up and 29 thing. So I sort of thought, well, I'd rather work for him than ride this out while I'm looking for my own job. Yeah. So I went to work for him for 2 or 3 years. That was actually a good time.
Yeah.
But I had my mind set at that point. So you go from earning a salary, and by that point I had a family, you know, we had all these kind of things going on. And, you know, you suddenly let it all go. Yeah.
And did you then like have money saved aside to be able to put in when you're, because you made that shift, you said, right, I've got 2 or 3 years, I'm going to put that money aside? Or was it going to the bank and going, look, here's my track record, will you back me? Will you take a risk?
We borrowed money to open our first business, right? Now, back then, there was a thing, I think it still exists, but it's not as common now. Now, this is in 2008.
Is this pre-crash?
Right as the crash is about to happen. Okay. So I think I started negotiating with it was a brewer's loan. Yep. Now, just to explain to you the way that works. So, say you work for Heineken, right? I come to you and I say, can you give me money, please? And they go, how much money do you need? And go, £100,000. And they go, okay, you can pay us it back with interest, the same as what you would do with the bank, but you have to buy your beer off of me. Yeah. And the guy that's not got a loan can be paying £100 a keg. I'm paying £150 a keg. So that's how you benefit.
Yeah. So I'm getting the interest, and I'm getting you're only supplier, and I'm not using anyone else, and I'm getting extra prices.
Yeah. So that's the way it works. So it just makes it harder for new startups, but it's access to money that's
you wouldn't have got otherwise. So it's like weighing up the cost, but if you don't get that funding, there's no other way forward, possibly.
So there was this huge company that did that called Scottish in Newcastle, and they were the biggest pub owner, biggest brewer, and I was the very last brewer's loan to go through with Scottish in Newcastle right before the crash.
Right, okay.
So I got signed in the dotted line, a guy called Jeff O'Brien, who ended up working for the bank. He was working for Scottish in Newcastle, and I got that signed. That got through, and like literally the next day they went, no more loans. There's a huge crash coming. This is too risky.
Yeah. So I already got signed.
Yeah.
And how did that impact your plans then, the crash? If you're just starting out?
It was, well, first and foremost, I'd gone from running this kind of high, one of the things that we were known for in 29 was this high-end steakhouse. Yeah. And I thought, no one's going to be able to afford that. Yeah. So we changed it, and we were going to be a cocktail bar and pizzeria. Yeah. So I had this idea in my head called Soho. I'd been to a lot of places in London that did kind of simple food but good cocktails. Yeah. And at this time, you couldn't really go, like now you get a lot of Italian restaurants, you can go and get a nice cocktail, but then that wasn't. You would go get a bottle of Peroni or something like that. It would be your only beer, and then you would have your spirits and mix. Yeah. So I thought, what if I could do like the cocktails and that and a good range of draft beers? Yeah. So it was like an Italian food, but felt like that, and it'll be affordable. So it completely changed the business model for one. Mm-hmm. But the strain and the stress of trying to make money was just horrendous.
And so you opened it as that initially?
I didn't open it as the steakhouse. I went straight in at the Italian food side. Right, so it was pizza, pasta.
Yeah. It was going to be a steakhouse beforehand, but because of the crash, you pivoted and said, I'm going to change. It was
going to be Soho Bar and Grill, and it turned into Soho Bar and Pizzeria while we were doing it. And it was that's what we did.
And was it a empty unit? Had it been a restaurant before?
It was a famous pub called Fix.
Okay.
Right.
Which taking you right back to my early years here, and I'm not sure if it's a good thing or not.
In Miller Street. Yeah. But there were no other bars in Miller Street now then, you know.
Whereas now
that was the only one. Yeah. And it was kind of out the way. Yeah. There were no bars at George Square at that point apart from the Weatherspoons. It was a totally different thing. We were stuck right out the way. Yeah. So that's what we did. We got that site. The guy that had it was dying to get out of there. We did as much as we could afford for the shop fit.
Yeah.
And we opened it up as Soho Bar and Pizzeria in 2008, and it was tough. People weren't coming through the door.
And how did you survive those early years during the crisis and the crash?
There was one stroke of luck where we were literally just hardly doing any money at all. I mean, I thought probably arrogantly, all my old customers will come to me, but I was doing a very different thing. And a lot of them did, but not as many as I'd hoped. And people didn't have money. It was in the middle of a credit crunch. Everything was falling through the floor. And we were doing cheap deals. We were doing everything we could. We couldn't really drive through social media. Yeah. Because social media hadn't really kicked it off.
Yeah.
So, you're taking out little adverts in the newspaper and things like that to try and get it going. You've got kids out doing flyers to try and get it going. And we just did everything that we could. But as I say, there was no TripAdvisor, there was no online restaurant reviews, so it was newspaper reviewers, and the biggest one was Tam Cohen. Tam Cohen is, for anyone, he's a football pundit more than anything. Yeah. But he's very, very funny, and he had a very funny column in the Record, and every Saturday he did this 2-page restaurant review.
Yeah, I remember.
And it was massive. Yeah. This is when, I think the Daily Record was selling 1 million copies, all over Scotland, which no newspaper does anywhere near that. No. Print media, not even online. Yeah. And he would do this 2-page spread, and he came in and gave us a good review, and that was like someone flicked a switch.
Yeah.
Has he got free meals forevermore now then?
I know Tam really well, and I've told him that story. I said, do you realise how much power you had?
Yeah.
He was like, I don't, I think he felt a bit uneasy about that sometimes.
And did he come in just like the Record said, we want you to go and review this restaurant, or was it someone in your team was being in contact saying, can you come and give us a shot? Or
no, he comes in anonymous.
Yeah.
He came in with there's a socialist politician, Tommy Sheridan.
Yeah.
Came in with him.
Yeah.
And Tommy Sheridan, it was funny because he named him in the reviews Tommy, my mate Tommy. That's Tommy Sheridan. Yeah. And Tommy Sheridan had been involved in this is, people watching this don't know, he was a politician that was accused of some kind of illicit marital affairs that he was having, and he actually won in court against the newspaper by representing himself. Yeah. And he said to me, why do you call it Soho? And I said, as I was talking to the table at the end of it, I said, well, it kind of reminded me a lot of the basement bars in Soho. The company I work for was in Soho, and I just thought, you've got the kind of the kind of gay bars at one side, you get the shopping bits. So it really reminded me of Soho in London, so I thought I'd call it Soho. And he went, there better not be a red light out there, big man, because I'm in enough trouble. So that was quite funny.
And did you clock them coming in that day? Did you know?
Oh yeah, I clocked it right away, and I went, oh my God,
And is everyone on high alert then?
Yeah, high alert.
Right, make sure this goes out.
But it was good. He really enjoyed it, and we got a nice review, and that was enough to just give us that wee boost.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, after 2 years, even making that money, we were still having to do food so cheap, and the margins were so tight, and you're having to buy your beer at a big expense, and all this kind of thing that, the place is doing about turning over 12 grand a week, right? But we were £120,000 in debt. Yeah. So I was just lucky. I got offered to go back to work while I had my own business.
Oh, really? And so tell us more about that.
Well, I mentioned to you before that I'd been running these big venues. Yeah. And years ago, this is before Tiger, before anything, I was actually a manager in the Corinthian.
Oh, yeah.
And it was owned by a guy called Stefan King.
Yep.
Which was G1 Group, and then it became Scotsman Group. And I can always remember, that it was really chaotic time for the Corinthian because there'd been nothing like it, and no one knew how to run it. So you had guys like me coming in, and all these managers kept leaving. Yeah, just going, this is chaos. This is too hard work. These hours are too long.
Just because it was such a behemoth of a venue with so many different things.
Yeah, it was open from lunchtime until 4 a.m. Yeah. So they ended up, there's only 2 managers that stuck it out, me and this guy called Kristen.
Okay.
And we were the only ones there for a while. And then they maybe had an office manager, but we were running the place. So when he went on holiday, I would have to be there the whole. So if you took a week's holiday, I was there every day from lunchtime till 4 a.m. And then you've got your cash up. Yeah. And then you're back in. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah.
And I think like a lot of people, you know, you get into situations like that where you think, am I being exploited? But for me, I was always driven by, well, all these managers are going and chucking it and putting pressure on me and the other staff. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
That was my mentality. And that, you know, I eventually did that for about a year, handed my notice in.
And were you still running Soho at this time?
No, I'm sorry, this is way before.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
This is way before. And this is like when I was 21 or something. This is before I worked in Tiger. This is before I did One Up in 29, and this is way back. And I said, look, I'm going to leave. I've been offered another job, and they said, well, can you give us 3 months notice? I wasn't obliged to do that.
No.
I'm a contract, but I did it anyway.
Yeah.
12 weeks. And I think he remembered that. Yeah. So here I am, you know, all these years later, 10, 12 years later, whatever. And I'm there and I'm on £120,000 of debt. Yeah. And I just didn't know what to do. You know, and you know, you're getting the VAT man coming up. I was in first name terms with the VAT the VAT collector, you know, Julie. Yeah. And you know, she's going, oh, yeah, is your wee dog all right? I was going, yeah, she wasn't barking there when I came the other day. And like she's chapping the door all the time, you know. The wife's having her friends round for coffee and the bailiffs are turning up at the door. It was really, really scary stuff. Yeah. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? So my wife's parents actually said, look, you guys need a holiday. Because she was working full time. Yeah. We had the babies and everything. And 2 young kids, 2 toddlers. You know what that's like. Yeah.
Stressful.
More stressful than any business you'll ever run, right?
You're going to business for a break, even with the
go to work. So I'm sitting there and they said, look, go and get a holiday. So we went to Soho. Yeah. It was actually great because we got stuck over there because I remember the ash cloud.
Yeah.
So we ended up, what was meant to be a week's holiday in Soho turned into 2. And we get stuck there. And, you know, you get free hotels and all that with insurance. It was great. And free, obviously, flight back. So we were okay. And, you know, my in-laws had paid for the holiday and everything to just say, you guys need to get a break because we couldn't afford it at that point. And I get this call. Can you come and meet Stefan, this guy that ran this Corinthian? Yeah. And I did. And he said, I had a meeting with him when I got back and he said, look, we're doing the Corinthian again. It's going to be bigger than ever. It's going to have a casino in it. It's going to be absolute mayhem. Yeah. I'm totally comfortable. I know you've got your own business, but would you do this job as well as director? And that was it. That saved us. So I was able to go and do that job, got very well paid for it, very well paid for doing the job. And while I had that job, I was able just to go, some of my salary was able to go into paying off the debt. And of course, I no longer had to take a salary out of my own business. Yeah. And that was it. And actually, I was meant to help him for a year. It turned into 3.5 years, which we finished up amicably. Yep. But the time I came out with it, 3.5 years, I had no debt and I had another restaurant open, Little Soho in Jordan Hill, which is still there. And that was it.
And how did you know, you're on the table serving Tam Cowan, you're working within it. Did you have to hire someone to come in when you went to do them work?
Yeah.
But he was still positive overall, or and all the systems and stuff in place? Or
my brother works in the industry. Yeah. And I said to him, can you, you know, he was doing another job. Yeah. I said, can you come and run it while I'm doing that? So granted, he still took a salary, but, you know, me and my wife.
So he stopped.
Yeah.
Because you're getting paid.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, you've got 2 venues. When did you start to have the master plan of what you've got now?
So Bucks, so I've got these 2 venues and I'll be honest with you, we were out of debt, but we weren't making much money. Yeah. But we just weren't having to deal with people turning up at our door, threatening to knock it down and all that kind of stuff.
And once you're clear of debt on the brewer's loan, are you still tied to Heineken or are you able to then move?
Well, I still had about £20,000 of that loan outstanding, right? So I had this idea for this place called Bucks. Now, it started off with trying to create an atmosphere. Now, when I say that, like, I'm a big believer, I don't like trends. I like looking at things that have always been there and do well over the period of time. So if I tell you that, if I start talking to you about a place, now imagine a place called Gino's Trattoria, and it's got red tablecloths, and there's Italian music, and the waiters are in black and white. You already know what the food's going to be like. Everything's going to be there. You can picture yourself in it. Yeah. If I start talking to you about an all-American steakhouse, if I start talking to you about an Irish pub, you get a very, very clear picture in your head. Yeah. Right? You know when you spend any time in the States?
A little bit, but not
much.
Not much. Well, you know in the movies when you maybe see a place, guys at the bar drinking bourbon, it's kind of rock and roll bar. Yeah. You know, and you maybe get some wings and you're sitting up there and there's maybe a bit of live music and you see those things in the movies all the time. And how many places are like that?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. And I felt that I always really loved that vibe, but I couldn't get it here.
Yeah.
And if it was here, it was maybe a bit too polished. It was maybe done by a big chain or something like that, you know.
Yeah. Proper dive bar kind of.
Yeah, proper dive bar, right? Yeah. And I thought, but the food's still really good.
Yeah.
Like you're going in there and you're going, God, that burger's really good, or that is really good. So I had the idea for a kind of place like that. And then I thought, what kind of food do I do? And now everyone at the time was doing gourmet burgers, and there was a real thing on smoked meats at the time.
Was it 5 meat, all with puns of meat bars around?
Yeah, George meat Street bar and all that kind of meat bars at Crossroads. There's very good steaks in there. So that some of them do it well. That's one of the ones that survived, but a lot of them didn't do it well, and they've fallen by the wayside. So this is about 2015 at this point. Yeah. So I thought, what kind of food do I do? And then I was on holiday in New York, and again, we get stuck because of a snowstorm. So I had an extra week in New York. So things seem to happen when I get stuck in places. I know. Yeah. So very strange that. And I ended up eating in a place called Peach's Hot House, which did really good fried chicken. It was in Brooklyn. Yeah. And I thought, why can't we get fried chicken like that back home? And then I thought, well, that fits in with the music. That fits in with the vibe. We could do some wings. We could do some really good fried chicken. Since then, we've been to Nashville. Tried the Nashville hot chicken, everything. Yeah. And that was it. It was all going to be about doing fried chicken really, really well. Yeah. And that's what we did. So I went to Heineken. I said, look, I know I've got 20 grand left, but I've been good for it. Can you give me any more money and help finance this thing called Bucks? And they said no. And then I went to Belhaven and they said no. And then I went to Tenants and Tenants said yes. Great. So Tenants gave me enough money to pay off Heineken and have some money left. But it was so complicated and everything that another £20,000 went to lawyers' fees. Yeah. And I ended up with like £20,000 to start a new bar.
Try and get it out. We're proper dive bar then.
So we got the site, which was the first Bucks on West Regent Street. Yeah. That no one really wanted. It went for nothing. Yeah. You could take the lease on for nothing. Yeah. It had been a successful restaurant called Osteria Piero. Then he'd moved on, and then it had been Boozy Rouge before that. It had done quite well. But it hadn't done well for a couple of incarnations. And then we managed to get it. And that was it. We opened up Bucks Bar.
Was that a success from day one?
No, it was miles off being a success. Right, okay. So there was nowhere that was doing us kind of one type of food, fried chicken offering, just chicken, beer, and cocktails and rock music, and no one was doing it, and people didn't really get it, and actually the quality wasn't right when we first did it because we couldn't. It's a very exacting technique, but see to do it by volume. Yeah. It's easy to do once, but see if you're feeding a few people a day and then 100 people a day, 50, but even just a few portions, it's very, very, there's a lot of precision that goes into every part of what we do, even though it's a very simple type of food. And it was just, I knew with this place to get it to work, it had to do about 11 or 12 grand a week just to break even. Mm-hmm. And, first week it does 6, then 7, then 8 the next week. And then, it's 8 grand a couple of weeks. I thought I need to push this more. Yeah. Then it dropped back down to 6, then 5, then 4. Yeah. And it just bottomed out. It was dead. People weren't liking it. They weren't feeling it. The place wasn't finished inside. Okay. I didn't have the money to finish it. Didn't have any of the neons up, so the atmosphere wasn't quite there. We're doing our best. And it was, you know, I always tell a story. The worst day ever was one coffee. That was all we sold. So you think of that, you're open from 12 o'clock in the afternoon till midnight. Yeah. Phone at the manager at the end of the night and say, what you sold today? How many meals? They say, we haven't sold any meals. We haven't sold any drinks. We've sold one coffee, one cappuccino.
And how many people do you have as a minimum to keep open? There's like 2 or 3 staff on at least? Because you've got some staff and
exactly.
Waiting staff, and
so
bar staff. And
it was just eating money.
Yeah.
And by this point, Miller Street was doing pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Little Soho was doing well. And I was thinking I might just change this to a Soho.
Yeah.
Because that business model works. And I went in one morning and I'm like looking at a kitchen, measuring up for pizza ovens and doing something different. But I didn't have the money to do it. I got it all priced up. How much would it be for pizza ovens and to change it and to change the signage? I didn't have the money to do it. So nearly thought this could just be the end. Might just have to shut this one. Yeah. And then a number of things happened. You know, there was a bit of PR. There was the Shania Twain turned up out of the blue.
Okay.
How did Shania Twain find the restaurant?
It was bizarre. It was a funny story actually, because we'd actually, to be honest, at that point, we'd seen the sales creeping up slightly.
Yeah.
Just people were coming in and enjoying it.
Yeah.
And we were getting really, really, really great feedback about the food.
I was going to say, was that word of mouth? It was
word of mouth. Yeah. And social media the food looked great in social media and people were sharing it and people really started talking about the food.
Yeah.
So it started creeping up and we were getting a few, some nights we're doing 20, 30 people in for dinner.
Nice.
And that was all good. And at least they're enjoying it as long as they tell their friends. So I phoned up my manager, Simone, at the time, so she's now my area manager. Yeah. And I phoned her and I said, how's it been tonight? And she went, yeah, it's been quite a good night. We've still got 4 or 5 tables in. I said, all right, cool. Nice one. Speak to you later. And then a journalist called Bev Lyons phoned me.
Yeah.
And she said, you've got Shania Twain sitting in your restaurant right now. I said, what are you talking about? Shania Twain. I just spoke to the manager. Shania Twain sitting in the restaurant. What nonsense. And she said, is you're the restaurant that's got now, we do this silly joke on our toilets instead of ladies and gents, it's cocks and hens.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2 doors are next to each other. And she posted a picture of her. Shania Twain stood outside these, pointing at it and
so
going.
Shania Twain posted it herself?
Posted it herself on Instagram. Welcome to Glasgow. Her standing outside the toilets in Bucks. Right? Because she thought this was funny.
Yeah.
And Bev Lyons, eagle-eyed Bev, who's always spotting it. And she said, no, Shania Twain. So I phoned back and spoke to the manager, Simone. I said, Simone. She said, what is it? I said, is Shania Twain sitting in the restaurant right now? She went, what? I said, yeah, Shania Twain. She went, no, we've only got 2, 3 foot. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. And she loved her country and stuff when she was younger. And she's like, Shania Twain's sitting there. And we got a lot of PR out of that.
Yeah.
Bev rushed down, got a picture with her, did a quick interview in the street outside Bucks, and that all helped. And just wee things like that. And
it's not really a wee thing, is it? It's quite a big thing.
It was quite a big thing, yeah. It's still quite a big thing. And, then Kevin Hart came in, got a takeaway. And just wee things like that started happening. A couple of famous people. But most important, people really started liking it. As the money starts coming in, we start to get the neons and the decor and everything the way we wanted and the atmosphere we liked. And people really, really embraced it. Mm-hmm. And it just took off from there.
And did Tam Cohen come back in?
He's been in, yeah. Oh, he loves it, actually. Yeah. He comes in quite a bit. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but he didn't review it. By that point, he wasn't doing... I think there's only 1 or 2 restaurant reviewers now. And they've not got the same traction that they used to because it's all moved on to online.
What I was going to say is it's social media that then is the main driver of your business now.
Yeah. I mean, I always... online reviews are great. And you can take a lot of information from them in terms of things you've done wrong. Number one, things you're doing right. And they give you that. But at the same time, you go onto people's social media and if you like the look of it, it doesn't really matter what the reviews say.
You'll go in anyway.
You'll go in anyway.
Yeah.
Your curiosity. It's a great way of getting the feel of the place to your customers. So it's huge.
And how long did you have that Bucks then before you decided to open another one?
Well, we opened that in 2016, and by 2019 we were ready to do another one.
And how did you know when you were ready?
Because number one, the bank balance. So we were making profit. We were turning a lot of business away 7 days a week.
Okay.
Like a lot. Constantly people trying to book a table, constantly people coming in the door.
Yeah.
And we said we actually could, the city centre could support another one of these. So we started looking at the other end of the city centre, and that's when we got Bucks Bar Trongate.
Yep.
So, I mean, by this point, just giving it, I mean, we can, we can do 500 covers a day just in one Bucks.
Okay.
Just in that one. So it's really, really busy, and it's busy every day.
And was that funded again through
Self-funded?
Brewers, or self-funded that one because the other one was doing so well at that stage?
So actually, this is interesting because, when I took out the first brewer's loan, you're having to put your house down as a guarantee, you're having to send them a business plan, you're having to do X, Y, and Z. The tenants thing was pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And we actually, by the time that one came along, we were able to pay off tenants for their loan.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then things change.
Yeah.
Then people are saying, well, can we give you money?
Yeah.
If you
When
sell
don't
our
need
beer,
it.
and you can buy it off whoever you want.
Yeah.
So things flip.
Yeah.
So like I always say this to everyone, the hardest work you'll ever have in the hospitality is owning one venue.
Yeah.
It's horrendously hard because say you've only got one team of staff. So if someone phones in sick, that's a big chunk of your workforce.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got two venues, it's not the same. You maybe get someone else to go over and support.
Yeah.
You're able to pay people a bit more. Your buying power starts to improve. And that's the road we're on now.
And at this point, did you have the idea of having lots of them at this point, or was it just you were just feeling your way?
Well,
to
it
the
was
next
interesting. So see the first Bucks, I mentioned to you, it used to be a place called Boozy Rouge. So it's been a restaurant for a long, long time now. Restaurants used to have huge, big kitchen spaces and big brigades of chefs.
Yeah.
And, you could afford to do that because they didn't get paid as much. People paid more to go out. So that one actually had a huge kitchen.
Yeah.
So my idea was always, if we can have, if this kitchen's too big for what we need, but we can use it as a production kitchen and then have a refrigerated van take stuff to the second one. So we make all our own sauces, do our own marinades, butcher the chicken, tenderize the chicken. We do all that ourselves.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah. And then, that to me, that makes the difference.
Yeah.
If you
The quality that you talked about.
Yeah, if you get a buffalo sauce, for instance, buffalo wings, if you buy in a buffalo sauce or you make one yourself, you can make it a barbecue sauce, garlic mayo, anything.
Yeah.
It's that precision that you were talking about earlier.
it just makes a difference.
You're controlling all the factors.
And it's a subliminal thing that people don't even realise, but they go, well, that's different, that's better, that's fresher.
Yeah.
It's got better ingredients. So I always thought to myself, the kitchen's too big, so if we could do that, we've got enough storage in here to do another one, and that's what we did. So I always thought, we'll do 2.
Yeah.
And then when it got to 3, we had to get another central kitchen.
Yeah. Okay.
And 3, what year was that you got to 3?
Well, that was lockdown hit, didn't it?
Should we talk about that, do you think?
Yeah. So I was very against lockdowns latterly, not at the start. At the start, I thought, God, look, you've seen these pictures of people dropping dead in the streets. And then I thought it just got a bit silly. I think that if we were, without going into it too much, but you're getting told you've got to put all these measures in place because that will keep you safe.
Yeah.
And then you do it and then you're getting shut down again. Yeah. Whether it was the screens or putting tables further apart or monitoring how many people were in the toilets at one time. We were doing all that, sanitizer everywhere. We were doing all that.
Increased costs, less covers. It makes it even harder to make a margin.
I honestly believe that had they kept these social distancing regulations in and they had just said, and what we'll do is you won't have to pay as much VAT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just done that and let everyone go against it. Or if you want to shut down, we'll furlough you, giving businesses the option.
Yeah.
I think that the country would be in a better position right now financially.
That kind of sledgehammer to crack. And I always thought with furlough, I think in Germany they have furlough where it's like if your production starts to drop, you can furlough people and you can bring people in as and when you need them. where it's just like a complete shutdown. So,
Complete
everything
shutdown.
shuts down. Whereas if you said, look, you can work a reduced rate, you can furlough some of your staff, but you can keep your staff on, but you can do a takeaway or you can do something.
Yeah.
That seemed like a far more sensible option.
I think it was very irresponsible. It went too far. And that's, I'll always say that in a lot of the regulations, in Scotland, it became a thing where different politicians, and they were all guilty of it, were trying to outdo each other for like, we care more and we're more sensible and we do a better job of this.
Yeah.
And that was all parties.
Yeah.
I was critical of the government up here, but you could say the same of any of them, And, background music bans.
Yeah.
What? Come on, give me peace. Banning beer gardens.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not going to... Remember council tier levels?
Yeah.
So you could actually have, because that pub there is across the road from that pub there, but they're in different council areas. That one isn't allowed to open, that one is. And it was just nonsensical. It didn't make any sense, and it just caused people to go to house parties and do all this thing. It didn't work.
Yeah.
And I was against all of that. I thought it was silly.
And you started getting quite vocal about that stuff on...
Extremely vocal.
Yeah.
I just, not at this very start, but it was the background music ban where I really said, this is getting ridiculous now. And I got a huge backlash. So I posted about it.
Yeah.
I said, I think this is bad for bars, it's bad for restaurants. And I posted about it. I said, this is nonsense. This is us now going too far. This is the first stage of us going too far. And this is just when we'd opened up. And it was only in Scotland. Scotland was the only country in the world that did a background music ban.
Yeah.
It was all dreamt up. And I refused to do it. And I got vocal about it, and the press came round to see us and all this kind of stuff. And I just stuck to my guns, and we got a whole torrent of abuse for it.
Okay.
You're only thinking about yourself. You're not thinking about all these people dying. I said, no one's going to die from music.
Yeah.
So that was it. And actually, it was one of those things a lot of people said, you're wrong to do that. That'll be bad for your business. But it came full circle.
I was interested to see what impact it had on business and actually whether it was a good thing. It
came full circle. I mean, I personally, when places reopened, I'll give you an example, right? So the whole idea was they brought out a regulation that says you've got to remind people, someone comes in without a mask on, you've got to remind them to wear it.
Yeah.
And I said to my staff, what I want you to do is, I want you to just say to them once at the door, and I don't want you to say it to them again throughout the whole of their dining experience, because you've done your bit.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. In certain places I was going in, and they're constantly battering at people. Excuse me, could you put your mask on? Could you put your mask on? And it was like going into a hospital or something. Can you take your drinks off the tray and stuff like that? Because we don't want to touch them. And
I was always asked, who put it on the tray? And they're like, well, I did.
Exactly.
What difference does it make if you take it off again?
And looking back, it's all silly, and everyone will admit that.
Yeah.
But we were in the grip of fear at that point.
Because also Eat Out to Help Out was kind of like August 2020, wasn't it?
Yeah.
This was after that, the kind of music ban came in. Was that, or is this about that time?
Yeah. Well, the Eat Out to Help Out was brilliant, and the music ban came in after that.
Yeah.
So, but Eat Out to Help Out, the government up here got very vocal about it, saying, because that was a conservative government idea where, effectively you were able to go into a restaurant, you'd get a discount, and the government would pay for the discount. Yeah. And it was to get people back into the habit of going to restaurants. And the thing that annoyed me about that was there was a narrative that was led by the government here, which said, that caused a lot of spread. But I actually posted about this. There was an analysis done in areas where Eat Out to Help Out had, a huge uptake levels, in areas where it didn't. And there was no correlation between spread was much worse in the areas with higher uptake and lower uptake. Sometimes it was the other way around. I think there were just loads of factors that came into it. But I just thought it was all going too far, and it was, and we're paying the price for it now, actually. I think that, when they're talking about all these financial black holes and high taxes, and this was inevitable because we were spending money that we didn't have.
Mm-hmm. So you made it through lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
help me understand what happens and how you got out of lockdown and how the business was then.
Lockdown, we came through that whole period in the black. We never amassed any debt. And the reason was that I was fortunate. Now, this is where I was lucky because I'd run all sorts of businesses. But in this case, during lockdown, the type of food we do is good for takeaway.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing you want to get a takeaway.
Yeah.
And we just said, look, but at the time, remember when everyone was scared and it was only a few weeks in, I said, we're going to reopen and we're going to do it. Let's just do it for one weekend and see what happens. And we were the first restaurant in Glasgow to reopen during lockdown and do takeaway. And one of the things I was worried about, I thought, are we going to look greedy? Is this going to be a PR disaster for us? Because they'll just be saying, oh, look, people are dying and all you're caring about is making money. So I put a wee post up, who fancies a bucks?
Yeah.
Thinking of doing takeaway. Likes just through the roof.
Yeah.
And the first day of lockdown, the first day of Buckdown, we called it, Buckdown Takeaway. Yeah. I said, let's just do enough for 200 burgers.
Yeah.
We'll just work it ourselves. I had my kids working at it. Didn't want to get too many staff in. I had a couple of staff that were like...
And you furloughed the rest of the staff at this point?
All of the staff are furloughed. Yeah. So I just got enough staff in, like us helping them. But I had 2 members of staff that were like, this is really bad, our mental health, this lockdown thing. Yeah. Can we please just come in and do something? Yep. So we did that. We got them in. Yeah. And I had a friend who, she'd lost her job and she was a chef. I said, can you come and help in the kitchen? And she did. We got her in the payroll. She lost her job, no furlough. So she was happy to come in. And we just thought, let's do it. Love to do 200 burgers. Just do a burger. Yeah. Not the full menu. Make it simple. 700 people turned up the moment we opened the doors. No way. And 700 people socially distanced goes for about 1.5 miles, by the way, because you had to be lines in the street, and you're like, they're like way down, and like we're at the top of West Regent Street, and the queue's going down, and I had to go and count the heads, take the orders, work out what they were wanting, and then say, look, guys, there's not going to be any food for you. Yeah. But you're saying to people, you're going to be 2.5 hours till you get your food.
Yeah.
And then we're going, fine, got nothing else to do.
Yeah. Crazy times, wasn't it?
And then we did that another weekend, then we just opened it up full time. Yeah. Just one, starting with one, then the others. And it became like, do you remember that you were able to get your takeaway pints and stuff like that, and takeaway cocktails? It was like, being honest, it was almost like a street party, because in the summer, people were sitting in the, like offices like these, you get the steps, and all the offices were shut. So we're all just sitting there with our chicken and their beers and their cocktails, and people all in a big day out. And then they banned that, and it was just every time. Then they opened you, then they closed you, and I just said, look, whatever they do, we'll do what we can. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if they say you're not allowed to open past 5 o'clock, we won't open past 5 o'clock, but we'll do it, and we'll keep doing takeaway. Yeah. So some places were going, well, listen, it's not worth us only doing takeaway. Let's just shut down. We were like, keep going, keep pushing. Yeah.
And was that because you mentioned your staff's mental health? Was it because you wanted to look after them? Was it because you felt, I don't want to sit home, or was it because you knew that there was demand out there?
Well, what I noticed was this, that there were some staff that their mental health was suffering, right? And they had to get back to work. There was others I was speaking to, and you were persuading them to come in, or saying, look, come in and we'll make it safe for you as possible. And they were coming in, and then one member of my staff I spoke to, and he hadn't left his house. I said, how did you eat? And he said, deliver out every day. And I thought, this is wrong. Yeah. So we would sort of say, look, I don't think this is good for you. And I was just saying, just come in and it'll be all right. And then what you found was, we were ahead of the curve, because what I found with the whole COVID thing was that everyone was really scared. And then the more time you spent around the people, you got less scared. Yeah. Then you maybe got COVID and it wasn't bad for you, and you knew a lot of people that got it that wasn't bad for them, and then it just, the fear dissipated. So we were ahead of the curve in that sense, because the team were all getting together and becoming less and less scared. Yeah. So there was a kind of attitude forming amongst our own team where they were like, do you know what? I wish they'd just stop shutting us down. Yeah. So after the difficulty of getting everyone back to work, there was actually we're better off just working, we're better off keeping going. Yeah. And we didn't have to persuade them in that. We had to persuade them to get back to work. But that attitude of, God, I wish they'd stop making a big deal of this. as it was with the general public, sort of cultivated itself.
Yeah, I think there's at the start, it was like, everyone was kind of on board with it, but it got to the stage where it was like, we need to get back to normal life.
Yeah,
and
it needs to get back. This isn't good for people.
Yeah.
And, everyone would have someone in their family that was struggling mentally or whatever, or just knew someone, and it just wasn't good for people.
Yeah.
So when did you open up the next $2 then?
So the one after that was South Side. So just down the road from where I used to live in Mount Florida.
Yep.
And that site came up. And actually, what happened with Bucks was that when we first opened it, takeaway was a very small part of our business, because my priorities always got to look after the customers that are in there that have booked their table.
Yeah.
And we didn't push takeaway too hard.
Yeah.
But then we realised, as those two came out of lockdown, the first $2, you're going, well, actually, we can do more takeaway if we get some equipment in and we do some certain things and get our systems and processes in. So I thought about doing a takeaway Bucks.
Yeah.
So I was, where would that go well? The South Side, it would go. I used to live in the South Side. There's a lot of takeaway places, but there's nothing quite like a Bucks. And I looked at a couple of takeaway sites to take on.
Okay.
But then something became available, and it was it'd been an Italian restaurant. And I thought, well, why don't we, it's only got 40 seats in it, but why don't we it'll be a good takeaway spot, but it's also near Hampden.
Yeah.
And that's actually quite a nice area. Let's just do that. And, from the idea of doing a takeaway shop came the third Bucks.
Yeah.
And it was, a nice wee community restaurant as well, bar and restaurant that does really, really well on match days.
Yeah.
Or if there's a concert on at Hampden or an event, conference on at Hampden, it does great.
Excellent.
And what's with the diversification then into Thundercat?
Well, Thundercat is Soho. So Soho was my first venue.
Yep.
Right. Now, it was a brand that we came up with in 2008. And by the time, 12 years later, it was becoming a little bit old hat.
Yep.
And needed an update.
Yeah.
But to be honest, we always thought that. But the most expensive thing about changing a venue is shutting it down.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the cost of,
Losing
still having
income
to, losing all the business is your biggest cost. So during lockdown, we thought, well, let's just change it ourselves. And my dad painted the walls and, we did so much ourselves. Of course, we got other craftsmen to do things like furniture and we bought furniture in and we changed lighting and did all that. But my thoughts with Thundercat were this. I'd recognised that the clubbing scene was in decline, but people still like a vibrant, energetic atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I'd seen it in places in London, like, Sexy Fish or something like that, but you pay a fortune for your food.
Yeah.
You pay you pay 50 quid for a piece of tapas.
Yeah.
Everyone's posing. And I thought, well, what if you could just go in a vibrant atmosphere, but get the food that people like?
Yeah.
Everything everyone likes, chicken and waffles, hot dogs, deep dish pizza.
Yeah.
And really make it impactful, delicious food. Good diner food, but get that funky atmosphere going. And the idea of Thundercat came out. So you've got mirror balls and you've got moving lights and you've got all this, colourful kind of thing going on, light hitting the walls. But it's a place where you eat and drink. And you're mainly sat there or sat at the bar. It's not so much a nightclub with a dance floor. It's got that kind of vibe. So I thought, let's do that. And I didn't want to change it to a Bucks because it's in the middle of two Buckses.
Yeah.
So I thought that will maybe detract from there. So.
And how did did you have some loyal Soho fans that were like, oh no, we still
Yeah, absolutely. They don't like it anymore.
Right.
But you come to that point.
You got a new audience.
Yeah. I heard a brilliant podcast about this new Jaguar advert where it's all colourful Jaguars and everything. And I heard people saying, what a mistake, because that's so far from what Jaguar are. But then I heard another take on it saying, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Jaguar's not selling anymore. They've got to go for a new crowd. I thought that was really interesting. So it was a little bit like that. It was like, it's doing okay, but it could do much better.
As it was. It
was kind of, it just wasn't exciting anyone anymore. And Thundercat It was successful. So the name Thundercat actually came from I wanted it to be, Bucks is rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I love rock and roll music, but I wanted that to be different. So the other kind of music I love funk, I love soul, I love hip hop, but like really energetic stuff. I thought I want to do that kind of music. And I was trying to think of a name of an artist. I was maybe going to call it Bootsy Collins, who was a famous funk musician.
Yeah.
I thought people aren't going to really relate to that. But I was listening to a guy called Thundercat.
Okay.
And I thought, I'll just call it Thundercat.
Yeah.
Kind of inspired by him.
Yeah.
But then I was worried he was going to sue me.
Okay.
So far, so good.
So I thought I won't have any pictures of him. I won't say it's that, but that's it. But he actually came in.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
He was supporting the Red Hot Chili Peppers and he heard the bar was there.
Amazing.
And he came in and he posted about it. And he bought a t-shirt and everything. So that was really, really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, he came in.
So you ventured into Edinburgh as well?
Yeah, I've always wanted to. I love Edinburgh. I always wanted to be there. And I really liked this site on Hanover Street, which was La Rusticana.
Yep.
And I really, really wanted that site. I just like that George Street area, and I've always liked the bars but I like that side of George Street.
Yeah.
It's all the kind of independence and the wee pubs in Thistle Street. I love that
it's
street.
nice.
Love it round there. So I always wanted to be part of that. So it's right on Hanover and Thistle.
Yeah.
And two streets that I've always loved. I always used to go to the Dogs. Do you remember the Dogs in Edinburgh?
on
Great
Mismatched
place. Loved
cutlery
it.
and-
Loved it. Right. And that site came up and it got delayed for whatever reasons we'll go into. And then while we were trying to get that one open, Grindlay Street became available, which is the other area I like, which is up at Lothian Road.
Yeah.
And we ended up opening Grindlay Street first, and then
Were they, again, both self-financed?
everyone said we've never taken a loan. No.
But do you think you wouldn't have got... Because I always think people look at debt and go, I don't want to take debt on. But do you think you'd be able to get where you are without that first loan?
Oh no, I needed that first loan. Yeah. You always need that bit to get off the ground. But do you want to get investors in?
Yeah.
It was funny. I was at a Chamber of Commerce day, and it was a talk from. It was actually the guy that owns Tunnocks.
Okay.
He was talking, and he was really good. But then there were all loads of other co-speakers.
Yeah.
And it was really the theme of the day was, these things, open forums, what was your biggest mistake? And all of them regretted getting investors in.
Yeah.
Really?
It was really, really, it was like, I thought, is this meant to be that I'm here? It was at a point that I was thinking about it. We had a couple of people sniffing around.
Well, I was wondering, it must have, it seems quite a franchisable kind of we can take that and we can plug it into every city. And you've got, so if people come to you, investors come and said, we want to invest in, we'll open 20 new restaurants next year.
The way, franchises, so we look down the franchise route.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing about franchising. So what people don't realise is a lot of restaurants, when you look at bottom line profit, after you've paid for everything else, it's something like 5 to 10%.
Yeah.
Now, a franchisee is going to be looking for about 10%, and then you've got to take your cut.
Yeah.
So franchises and restaurant models, you've really got to look at a lot of these things where you eliminate staff.
Yeah.
So that's why you go into most of them, it'll be touch screens.
Yeah.
And eliminates the need for people.
Yeah.
And, they'll buy in their food, they'll bring it in from a food production company.
Yeah.
Ready, done.
Rather than you butchering it and creating your own
Rather
sauce
than
and
us doing our own thing. So that's something I think is brilliant if you can do it.
Yeah.
But you really, I think to make a success of a franchise model, you really need to have a very, very, a much higher margin, low reliance on people.
Yeah.
So franchising's not the future for you, but what is?
To be honest, at the moment, we're just trying to open more places. We're just trying to, we have a central infrastructure. So we've got our head office team and we've got our central kitchen that make everything, to very exacting standards. We're really good chefs.
Yeah.
And then it gets taken out in refrigerated vans. And whenever we open a new place, the cost of that central infrastructure gets diluted across the units. So each unit, when we open another one, the rest
cheaper.
of them become more profitable.
Yeah.
So we've kind of got a wee magic number of 10 units.
And is that then all in Scotland? Because your refrigerator? Or
I would probably. I looked at. We could actually, if we got a bigger production kitchen, we've got the facility there to send stuff down in London because you get these refrigerated vans.
Yeah.
The food's just sitting in a fridge.
Yeah.
So we could go all over the UK with a bigger production kitchen. But with this wee infrastructure we've got right now, with the people I've got, I always said we can take it to 10.
And do you spend time? I don't know if you got to 10. Would you be spending time in all the rest? Do you go into spot check, or is it just they
I
run by
like to turn up unannounced.
Yep.
So I have my Glasgow managers meeting on a Monday where we all sit around the table and we discuss all the key things. Then I have my Edinburgh one on a Thursday. Same again. And then I like to just catch up with them all during the week. I don't like to go into detail at those meetings.
No.
Yeah.
We just set goals and then we'll talk about it. I hate long meetings. I hate meetings about meetings.
Yeah.
We try and bring every meeting in within an hour.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. But I like to just step into the restaurants and you notice things.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
And I used to go into my units and I would actively kind of manage them. And so if I went into my unit and it wasn't running well, I'd say to the manager, right, step down, I'll do the door. What are you doing? What's this one doing? What's that one doing? Why is he not doing that?
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And that's quite difficult to get that discipline. But what then happens is when you turn up, everyone shrinks.
Yeah.
Everyone goes, oh, what do I do? He's here now.
Yeah.
We'll wait and take direction from him.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. Your GM or your manager or whoever's in charge has got to be the person.
Yeah. They don't learn either. If you're doing everything for them, how are they going to know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that something you spotted yourself that you had to do, or do you have anyone
Absolutely.
help you? Yeah.
Absolutely. You notice it. You notice that the key is that you want and this is what my bosses used to do with me, that they'd say, look, you've got to take ownership of your venue.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing. You've got, ownership's a huge thing for us culturally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The opposite of blame culture. You look at what impact you can have on everything, or you could have done better. You know.
You've mentioned culture 2 or 3 times already through our discussion. So how do you embed that, and how do you embed it multi-site? Yeah.
So a lot of people have these, and we toyed with it all. You get these mission statements and all this kind of stuff. I don't think they really. I'm not a big believer in that. Yeah. I think that culturally it's got to be a way you think, a way you speak to people.
Yeah.
And it's got to be something that you do every day.
Yeah.
Right. And there's certain things you don't tolerate. Like we don't tolerate blame.
Yeah.
At all. Like so a really good way of doing that is if I have a really, really bad day's service at one of my venues, right? So say one of them has a really bad day today, right? And lots of things go wrong. Starts with me going, right, what could I have done to stop that happening?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who should have been there? Who have we hired that is struggling? Who's not been trained properly? What's going wrong with the systems and processes that we've put in place? And you whittle it down like that.
Yeah.
So you always say, where did we go wrong? So if I'm sitting down with a GM and saying, you messed up yesterday, it's completely different, right? Where did we go wrong? How do we stop this from happening again?
How to get better next time.
Yeah. So
I think I think where mission statements and things go wrong, I think they can be powerful, but I think if it's something that's too aspirational, or if it's not the day to day, so you can say a mission statement, but if it doesn't reflect the day to day work of the people on the team, they're not going to believe in it.
Yeah.
So if you've got your values and your culture, it is kind of the same thing. But if you've got it nailed down and what's successful, what's not, then it's living, breathing, and it's actually something that people will walk into a Bucks bar or they come to work here, they'll know what the culture is. Whereas you can say my culture is this, but if it's not the reality, that's where the disconnect happens. Culture
is the way you do things. So I'll give you an example. Like, I'll tell you this right now. So many people that work for a lot of bar and restaurant companies, if you ask them a big complaint about what they don't like about their company culture, it can often be, I just get, even on my day off, I get lots of emails, or I get too many meetings, or I get lots of WhatsApps. I'm in lots of WhatsApp groups. Right. And it's really difficult to do. And I'm not there yet because it's just constantly WhatsApp groups springing up. But I've tried to say to them, right, let's try and keep emails to a minimum. So that, I'd rather you get one email talking about lots of different things a week. And then we can maybe have a meeting to discuss it later on. but I expect you to read that when you're at work.
Yeah.
WhatsApp can be a good communication tool, but I don't want you to look at it in your day off. I want you to turn it off.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be like WhatsApp in a restaurant could be really bad. There was a complaint in this restaurant last night. What happened? Who was on?
Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's an easy trap to fall into.
Yeah.
WhatsApp should be, there's a new location for that set of keys.
Yeah.
And it's like a piece of information that everyone needs to know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then if I really need to speak to you, I will call you.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, so even that kind of communication culture
Yep.
is quite hard to get everyone to stick to.
Yeah.
And it's something that needs attention every single day.
I think you said the word discipline earlier. It's the same like for yourself, but it's the same. It's like that discipline, and it's like only by reinforcing it day after day after day. That's when it starts to bed in and stick in.
So that to me, that's what culture is.
Yeah.
But it starts with the whole, that started from a good place. It's not started from what's the best way to get things done?
Yeah.
I think it's right, what's the best way to like do this sensibly without badgering people? And
was that because, a couple of times you mentioned the culture in other places you've worked? Was it you taking I like that from this place? Didn't like that so much and tried to build it around?
And that's the sort of thing you do in your career.
Yeah.
There's nothing, by the way, there's nothing wrong with doing things a completely different way. Everyone has their own way.
Yeah.
That's, it's like we were speaking earlier. I know people that I spoke about these big corporate cultures. I know guys that were working on the same level as me 10 years ago that are earning much more money than me. They've got big pensions set up. They've got share issues. They've got all this. They love their lives. They love their jobs. And they're in that corporate structure. I'm not looking down on it.
No.
It's just, it wasn't for me. And, the thing we were talking about when you were saying about going around the venues, what I do now, the big difference I do now is I don't actively go in and manage a situation that's a problem. I'll address it with them a few days later.
Yeah.
I'll say, listen, I was in last Tuesday.
Yeah.
How did you think that went? Right. This is what I saw. How do we address this? So you've got to try and get away from this knee-jerk, and it just gets
But I think that's where
panicked.
So if we have the conversations, it's that difference between in the business and on the business, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
Especially when you have been in the business to go, I can fix that.
100%.
And you actually have to force yourself to take that step back and take a breath and go, I'll deal with that another day.
That was a painful process.
Yeah.
It was really, really painful. And but I had to do it. And I'm now at the stage where I'm having to do that with my head of ops and my area managers and my exec chefs. Because they are tempted to sometimes go, all right, get out of the way, I'll do it.
Be the superhero.
Yeah.
So just before we close up then, we like to finish by asking all guests what their guiding principle in business is. What would you say to that?
Oh, that's a really, really difficult one. But I suppose when you're in hospitality, it really is about speaking to people the way you would like to be spoken to is a massive principle, because, and that goes for if someone's working for you. I mean, it's, if you're hiring a manager, you think, would I like to work for that person? Myself.
Yeah.
If you're speaking to someone in the bottom rung of the ladder, someone that's just started washing dishes, should be the same way you speak to your area manager, with the same courtesy. And it's the same with customers.
Yeah.
So, someone's, coming in for one Coca-Cola, that's fine. You treat them as well as someone that's booked a big party for 30. Comes to you every 4 times a year for their staff too. It's those are the big principles, I think.
Michael, thank you for joining us today. It's been really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.